Did you all have access to the this week's module 4? Anybody not have access to it? Krista, did you get on it? Yeah, okay. So everybody watched it, the ultimate pricing presentation. So first of all, I kind of want to go to Rhonda's questions that she sent to you guys. Rhonda, did you get any feedback back from that?
No.
Okay. So when Rhonda sends out that email, what she's kind of looking for is something that we can seed the beginning of this conversation with, which is like for this one, it was things you do with buyers to ensure that they understand the process. And the other one was how you keep them in their lane on the purchasing path. And the reason for this is everything changes all the time. And one of the most important pieces of us being together every day while we're immersed in what is an incredibly fast changing market is that we can help each other to see what's coming up down the road, even if somebody else is not even active doing it. So if you have some feedback after when Rhonda sends that, I'd really appreciate it, in the form of like some questions or things that you actually want to talk about from the week before that you've been working on. So you did module 3, you worked with and on module 3, hopefully, and the resources that were given. So if we learn anything new, that's why we want to make sure to share it. So I'm going to ask that question of you and volunteer, or I can start pointing at you, but things that you do with buyers to ensure that they understand the process now. So let's talk about that a little bit and how that has its own set of challenges in today's market.
I'll go.
Okay, Sarah.
I have a buyer, like an in-person meeting, or this last year over Zoom, depending on what they prefer and what time of the year it was. And then I have a buyer's guide that I put together that I hand that out to them, and it's with the Unibind machine. And in that, I include a copy of the purchase agreement, and I don't go over it line for line, but I go over the main points and tell them it's better to be prepared, knowing what's in that purchase agreement before we start writing offers. That way, if we get into a situation where we have to write something really fast, they're not hurrying through it and they're actually knowing what's going on.
Okay, that's great. Do most of you give people a copy of the purchase agreement before? Is that something that you regularly do, or? Okay. Does that ever come back at you, like they look at that and go like, oh, this is way too complicated, or is that then open more conversations before you write an offer?
I know Allison Roach does a really good job at that because I've seen her do it. Her clients are extremely well prepared before they ever get to the contract.
Okay. And don't you guys think that that's like the most important thing right now? If you're going to go into battle, they need to understand that it's going to be like what Steve said. This is not going to be the same kind of, I don't even know if it's negotiation anymore. I mean, honestly, I don't even know if that's a word that we are in the midst of. I feel like we're more
proposition is what it feels
like. Proposition, yeah, proposition. Any other words for it? I don't know, a match of wits. So, because it's kind of a dark hole to try to figure it all out. So yeah, and I know there's some transactional kinds of thinking that has had to change. I know that I am having to be more even relational in how I help the buyer think about what is the concerns that the seller has versus what's going to be the price. So yeah. So who else? Like, what are you doing with your buyers?
Misty's waving her hands.
Misty, go ahead.
I don't know if anybody does it. Obviously, I'm on the mortgage side, but I go through a cost sheet with them so they know exactly what they're coming out of pocket. And right now, I'm really breaking down what the difference is between $5,000 more in purchase price or $10,000 more in purchase price. So if you're, how bad do you want this house? If you're looking at $10,000 and your difference in house payment's only $50. Is this really the house for you if you're not willing to pay that other $10,000 in this kind of market? You know, so I really break down what the differences in payments are, what the cost sheets are, and how tax insurance affect each offer. So
From a team perspective of teaming with your lender and your title person, that to me is a really important piece, is that the lender also talks to them about the reality of what $5,000 more looks like in a payment, because people don't think in that direction. I try to address that at the first buyer interview, but all that stuff doesn't get reminded. So having that reminded by the person that you work with as the lender I think that's ultimately important. What do you guys feel like you need in your lender buyer relationships where it relates to getting them prepared?
Hey, Carol.
Yeah.
One of the other things I want to mention is being on the listing side. A lot of times when you get multiple offers, you're trying to call all of those lenders and see, okay, is this person really qualified? Have you verified income and assets? So on the buyer side, I try to be proactive, and I have my lender call, and usually that's Misty, will call the seller's agent directly and say, hey, this is what's up with the buyers. They're good. And then that way it saves the listing agent a phone call if they actually do their due diligence. And if they don't, it's still impressive that out of all of the offers you got, only one lender bothered to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is totally true. Because
Totally.
if I feel as a listing agent, if the lender calls me and it saves me a moment, it's a really good thing. So thank you, Don.
Almost every phone call I make, I hear from the agent saying, oh my gosh, the lender's never called me before. You know, that's almost the first response I get from every single one of them.
Yeah,
I believe it.
It really helps with the strength of what we're doing on our end. Misty, do you normally get a hold of them, or otherwise do you leave a message that contains that information?
Usually I get a hold of them, but I also leave a voicemail. And I'm also one to know, you know, who my market is too. If I've got more of a millennial agent, then I certainly send a text message as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. All right. This is a really big question. How do you keep people in their lane when you're writing 4 or 5 offers? Like, just keep them there instead of losing them off to some other possibility or nothing at all, or quitting, or what are you doing to do that? And I really want
I got one of those this morning. Honestly, that's why. So I've been working with a client who, with somebody else too, like kind of teaming up in a brokerage with them to look for this house. And it's a super specific, you know, need with a certain amount of land and house. And so it's been like 3 or 4 months that we've been looking for these things. And, you know, 1 or 2 have slipped through the fingers because of something else. And then even this morning, I did an agent open for it. I went and looked at this house that's going to be perfect for them. And rather than them, like when I'm showing other houses to clients, when they're like excited or whatever, the first thing out of their mouth when I'm texting back and forth with them is, oh, well, they probably won't like that we have to sell our other house first, like that other one that we lost out on, or they won't like this, or they're not going to like that. And it's like, so I honestly just had to like stop my car, pull over, and like just call them and be like, the only thing that you guys have to do is like and love the house. Like everything else, like we will take care and deal with all of that stuff. Like it's disheartening. I can, you know what I mean? But we will deal with all of that. And so just to remind them that all you have to do is worry about that. We will worry about all of that other stuff. That's honestly just happened to me about an hour ago. And that's kind of the first time that I've had to do that.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, well, it's 11:15, and I want us to get some time in breakout rooms. So, you know, I know that this is like, there's always like 1,000 things that we could be talking about, but this week's module was about the ultimate pricing presentation. I think our hands are more tied right now than all of these tools. However, some of these tools are tools that survive whether we're in a buyer's market, a seller's market, or a middle of the road market. Stop. Sorry, I've got a dog that's crying. So I really want you to talk about dialogues that you use and utilize that really work and things that you're struggling with as far as pricing is concerned. You can talk about how you offset commission pushbacks. You can talk about how you offset challenges with people having this incredibly not real idea of where their house is in the market because they hear all the rest of this stuff. But I really want you guys to come back with a couple of things. I want you to come back with what is it that is really working right now as far as helping people to be realistic about on the listing side. That's where we are right now, is on the listing side. So what are you saying and doing, and what are the conversations around realistic listing dialogues, and how are you teeing them up for a market like we are in right now, and keeping them, because I find that is as equally as hard as dealing with the buyers right now, is keeping the sellers really calm down through this, and making sure that they understand the decisions that they're making are not wrong decisions. Like a lot of people are telling them, well, you're selling your house too cheap, or you should be selling it yourself, or all those things, and how that all equates to some really powerful dialogues for you. So you guys kind of get that. Okay, so come back with that, and then come back with what you guys are all together really challenged with right now as far as pricing presentations. Okay, does that sound like enough meat for you to get into?
Everybody got that? And write that down, and then remember, pick somebody to come back and share with the rest of the group.
Something great that's working, something great that's challenging.
Really good stuff comes from this exercise. Hey, Carol, I had to switch computers because I realized I needed to do the breakout rooms. So okay. Can you make this Carol that I'm on co-host?
Okay. Oh, you're the other Carol, Susan.
I'm the other Carol. I can't do all that with my iPad.
Okay. I have to make you the host.
Go for it. Do it.
You're the host. Except I hope it keeps recording. Yeah, it should. Okay, it's recording.
Okay, breakout rooms. And we have... That's too many breakout rooms. Sorry, this is easy. I just wasn't ready. 3 to 4 people in a room, or 4 to 5 people in a room?
I'd say 4 to 5.
Got it.
Yeah, let's have fewer rooms. Tim, are you going in a room? Or
yes.
Are you going to put me in a room? Okay. Yep. All right. Go ahead.
Yep. And then you go in a room, and then I'll jump and visit people. So I'll see you around. See you on the other side, everybody. And then I will call you back at 11:40, just so you all know.
See ya.
I think so. Not quite. Oh yeah, there's some people. They're still in their rooms finishing their conversations. Here they go. We all here now? I think we are. Come on, where am I? Yeah, we are. There we are. Okay, everybody. I'm glad you guys are all. I was able to pop into several of the rooms. Let's start around the room. How about Rhonda, your group, either you or whoever in the group's going to share. Would you mind sharing?
Yes, Emily offered to talk.
Emily did? Okay,
wow.
Cool.
She was coerced into it.
I was. No, so we kind of talked about a couple things. We talked about as far as like FSBOs. Sam had mentioned that he worked with a FSBO that was basically just thought his house was worth way more than it was, and just spent a lot of time and energy on him, thought he was the expert, not us. Didn't really show much respect, didn't care if it sat, and he was not motivated. And then we also talked about kind of there's like greedy sellers that Tim and Rhonda have kind of dealt with. Like, oh, if we're going to get multiple offers, then shouldn't we be listing higher? And a couple of the takeaways from that we've kind of got at is definitely know your seller's motivation for listing. So do they want to sell right away? Do they want to let it sit? Do they not care when it sells? That's really important. And also appraisal is really important. So if a seller is going to be greedy on price, well, it's still got to appraise, and you don't want to have to jump over the hurdle. And then also with multiple, if we price it a little bit, maybe even lower than market, what the market's saying, we get multiple offers, then we can be more picky and choosy on what offers we pick, and kind of explain that to your sellers on
options of like contingencies and stuff. You can be really picky. So that's kind of stuff that we talked about.
I get it. That's good. Yeah, that's really good. You said Steve had somebody was like, is that who said had an investor that was asking way too much? Did you say Steve?
Sam.
Sam.
Or no, yeah, Sam
How'd
had
that
it.
turn out? Or are you still in the middle of it?
So yeah, I had a for sale by owner. This was probably about a year ago. Well, 6 months or so. And he just wanted way too much for his property. I did end up listening it because, like we kind of talked about in our room, I mean, being younger, needing money at this point, but now that I know, like everything that Brian was talking about really rang true as far as just everything he talked about, this guy did. He thought he was the expert. He didn't respect my opinion. He was okay with it sitting on the market. He thought that basically all these houses that were selling so quickly was because they were priced too low and that the agents weren't working hard enough. I mean, so he was a deal.
I will say, for every one of those really bad transactions, you learn how to deal with people. You learn how everybody's different. So, well, thanks everybody. We have 5 groups. So how about room 1? That was Jennifer Tucker, Jennifer Waxberg, Laura Osborne, Paulina Koizich, and Wilson.
I'm going to start off, but somebody from my group might add in because we aren't good note takers, I don't think. But we had good conversation. So I think the thing that was the best conversation part of the group was how to get your sellers. You've got listings ready to go, but they need to find a place to go to. And that is difficult right now. So how do you get them and have that conversation to get them to list now? List now, but not have a place to go, and alternatives for whether or not you've got your own rental you can put them into, whether or not they'd be comfortable going into a home with suites, a VRBO, B&B, because they know that the contingency to sell their house, with as many offers as people are getting. So some of the, Jennifer Waxberg has a house that she's going to keep as a rental when she moves into her new house. I hope that I got that right. Because we're just going to have to get people to list in order to get them into a new house and be competitive in their offers.
Good. Anybody else have anything to share on that? Any really amazing words of wisdom, somebody that can help us out?
No,
I haven't done this, but I have heard of agents who are talking to sellers about, if you don't have a place to go, even consider going into an apartment or a rental for a year and see how the market is in another year or two. But you'll be able to, because you can rent a fairly nice apartment for, spend $15,000 for the year on renting, and then if something comes open, if you can jump on it.
Yeah.
You can say, I usually say to the sellers, look, this is your market. You're going to get to dictate some of the terms. All my sellers right now are getting the listing date that they want. And also with flexibility put in there, because most of them are building and those keep getting pushed back. So I think, hey, this is your market. I've never not been able to find somebody a house. We're probably never going to get anybody to accept your contract if it's contingent on your sale of your home that's not even listed yet. We're not going to get considered next to most other offers. So, just we can list your house, we can get it on the market, but if we get somebody, and chances are we're going to be able to get a desperate, I don't use the word desperate, but there's big enough buyer pool out there. Maybe we can get that buyer that's willing to wait for us to find that home. Because so far, not having any trouble dictating the terms to the buyers on any deal lately. So
I think you're right. Anybody that doesn't currently own a home, your first time home buyers, they're willing to wait 60, 90, 120 days after writing 20 offers they didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Steve, are you out there waiting? Steve, your sellers, they they don't have their house on the market and they're out there hunting with a home sale contingency?
I haven't had any, I mean, all of my listings, to be honest, right, I haven't had, I mean, I've got 2 that are coming up this month, but they're, all of my listing, the last listing I had was in August, everything else has been buy, but all of my listings are my flipper that I work with right now are heavy of my flipper. And so it's, you know, there's no contingency of anything with that. So, and the few listings that I've had last year, I haven't had to have any, knock on wood, any of my listings of my 15 listings last year, none of them were contingent on, had sale contingencies or anything. So it was like they were either able to buy the new house and move into it and then sell the other one. They didn't need to sell the first one, the one they lived in. You know what I mean? Luckily, I know that I'm going to run into this. I know it's going to be a conversation at some point, but I've never had to deal with it yet. The only thing that I've got one coming up that I know will be that they're kind of nervous about, but from the listing side, I think that it would be better for them, their circumstance to list their house first and get it under contract, and then on the listing say, you know, give to find suitable housing, right? To find suitable housing or to find a house. And then the buyers, since it's a buyer's market or seller's market anyways, there's so many offers from the buyers that they're just going to be like, I mean, buyers are just finding ways to make it as appealing as possible. So if they've got to swallow, okay, we might have to wait for them to find a house. I think that buyers are more susceptible. I know my buyers would be more susceptible to, okay, well, yeah, we can deal with that and give them a more flexible close date. But I would suggest in this market to do that, you know what I mean, to get your house under contract first and then find the new house. That's what I would suggest to my sellers probably.
Cool. Good for you. Well, Stephen, who was in your group? So we can talk, let you guys talk.
It was Amy, Kara, me, Allison, and Sarah.
That's right. I guess I knew that. Did you guys already talk about who wants to speak?
Amy did.
Okay.
Yep.
Here we are, Amy. It's your turn.
Oh, I didn't know I wanted to speak. Thanks. We talked a lot about the challenges, but we were it wasn't a negative conversation. It was a good conversation because, you know, we can all learn from it. Just a couple things that I mentioned early on in my career. I had a referral for a listing. I went on it. I didn't prep well in terms of asking the sellers questions, and I went off of things like the DC assessor. So I was off on square footage, off on bedrooms, off on bathrooms. Obviously the comps were a little off, and he was pressing me to give him numbers, and I didn't want to do that. I just, you know, I kind of had a range, but my range was now off because I had some other things that had changed. And so when he pressed and was very aggressive about it, I was kind of put on the spot. I threw a number out there, a range that wasn't to his liking, and he ended up going with someone else. So that was really, really early on in my career, but it was also, it was a bummer because it was a referral to me, and you always want to do well, by your referrals. And then I just kind of talked about one that I recently had where the sellers were very adamant about their listing. They wanted to list it at 525. I sold it to them 9 months before at 400, but they did some work. They did quite a bit of work, but I mean, they redid floors, they ripped up carpet and put in wood floors. So they did some work, but it wasn't $125,000 worth of work. And I kind of had to have a come to Jesus with them, and they were just really adamant. And I don't know, we've all been put in this position. I think you're kind of like, well, do I take the listing? And they also became really good friends of mine. So, do I take the listing and have a very frank conversation with them? Yes, I did. So basically I said, okay, this is what you want to list it at. These are the comps. And the comps, I'm not gonna lie, they were all over the board. They were in Huntington Park. They were all over the board, because you have different, parts of the development. But I did have that conversation of, okay, we're going to keep this on the market for a week or two and watch it. I will have my opens. I will be networking with people. And ultimately I ended up with an offer a week later, and then that fell through right away because of financing. And then I had drop it too. We ended up dropping it twice and got it at 480, which was where I basically told them it would probably be anywhere from like 470 to 485, I think it was, or 475 to 485. That's frustrating. I don't know what you guys all think about that, but, or if you've, how you deal with it, or, I mean, you have to take the listing.
It sounds like you handled it right, and you were able to talk them through it and get them down to a reasonable price. Of course, none of us want to list an overpriced home, but I will say the words that I use, if I know that I'm competing with another agent and I'm nervous about the price, I'll just say, hey, if you like me and what I have to offer, but you like the other person's price better, don't let that stand in the way. We can talk through price. But what I do is more than just helping you choose the price. And just kind of say that a little bit. And then once in a while, they will come back to me and say, well, the other realtor said they wanted to list it for this. And I'll be like, okay, within reason. Yeah. So we have one more group. Thank you very much, Amy. We have another group to share. Group 3, Ben Smale, Don Grimshaw, Julie Thurston, Krista Luther, and Sarah Pavel. I don't think you did yet. One of you speaking?
No. Okay, I guess I'm nominated to speak again. So, y'all are tired of listening to me. Sorry. Okay, so we had a really good conversation about pricing and commission, but some of those things I think were covered, not as much on commission, but we just talked about, how to hold your commission firm by establishing your value, and Brian had some good language in there about value. But one of the things that we talked about that I thought maybe this group would appreciate, because nobody's kind of hit on that for sale by owner very deeply yet. A lot of people in this market think that they can sell their house themselves, and they can, because a monkey can sell a house right now. But I just recently had a situation where it was a referral to me, and I had an appointment scheduled with a seller on a Sunday evening. And before I went over there, she said, well, let me just put it on Zillow as a for sale by owner and see what happens. And she had an open house that afternoon before I got there. And she actually, and Allison was one of my offers, so Allison can speak to this too. But she was so overwhelmed with how many people came through the open house, how much interest there was, how many phone calls she got. And then she had 3 buyers that were working with agents that wanted to write an offer immediately. And one of the agents was quite pushy and very aggressive. And she was just so overwhelmed, she didn't even know what to do. And so I think it's really good to have that conversation with people who are thinking about doing a for sale by owner of, number one, they're not being exposed to the whole market, and are you really getting your maximum price? And number 2, what happens when you have 100 people calling you, or Krista had brought up, that person has your phone number forever. So, problems during the transaction, problems after the transaction, they're gonna be calling you directly. And most people are working with an agent, and you have these very aggressive agents working for their buyers on the other side, and these sellers have no idea. I mean, even in this multiple offer situation, there were some nuances that had nothing to do with price that made one offer better than the other one. And she would not have known that if I hadn't sat down and explained the different details of the offer, and she would have ended up with a less amazing offer. So I think that's an important conversation to have with people.
Very well done. I like that. Thanks, Dawn.
Yeah.
And Carol Sissa had one recently where the seller was going to do for sale by owner, and they said this is overwhelming. People don't realize how overwhelming it is when you get those, even if it's just 5 or 6 offers, being able to compare apples to apples. Not everybody knows how to do it. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're like experienced agents, and when Ben said, like, okay, when you list a house and you get 20 offers, like, we're overwhelmed. And we do this every day. Like, how do you go through hundreds of pages of a contract and not miss something when you don't know what you're doing?
I think we need to at some point during all this, I've been thinking about this the last couple of weeks, about the amazing job that so many listing agents are doing with gathering all of these offers, putting them into a presentable form sheet, making the phone calls, to each agent. And that is a huge, huge job. So, we sell ourselves short sometimes when we say, oh my God, it's so easy to sell a house right now. Well, listing agents need to get a lot more kudos than they're getting. Buyers agents, yes, strategies are up and everything, but I watched this one that Aubrey Hess actually was the listing agent on, the one that was like 25 offers. And my God, she was like consistent all the way through the whole thing. Like she verified everything. And I'm sure she did this on all of them. So, you guys who are listing and in scooping all these, all these offers, like, congratulations, you're doing a great job. I just needed to say that because I've thought about that, but that's not easy. Like, it's hard enough for me to like look at two things at the same time. So 10, 20 is crazy. So, and I think
will
that the
say,
seller.
one thing I hate when I have a listing, and it happens every time, is the buyer's agents will call me. What do I need to do to get this house for my clients? What do I need to do? How do I need to write it? Well, how am I supposed to answer that?
Yeah.
So
Big and bold. Like the biggest question that we have right now, and I tell the buyers this, that when we're going to write an offer, is I want them to put themselves into the seller's head and ask themselves, what would make this the easiest possible for me? Like what would somebody be able to come by and say? It's like somebody's delivering you dinner, like it, and they include the plates and the forks, and it all goes into one bag and it goes away like that. How do you do that in your offer?
And to your point, Tim, about calling and saying, how do I get this? I don't do that, but I do call the listing agent every single time and I say, what are the pain points of the seller?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's
Are they
perfect.
looking for the
yeah.
shortest close? Are they looking for no contingencies? Are they looking for
That's what you should do. You should call and ask, tell me more about it. What can I, that kind of thing. Not, well, with this one house that I had 23 offers, about 5 of them called and said, what is your highest offer? I'm not going to tell you that. And I said, well, you can, but I'm not.
Exactly.
I have one other point real quick too. I'm sure a lot of people know this because you've been doing it for a long time and have a lot of experience, but I run into some situations with agents who don't know that just because you have multiple offers and they have an escalation clause, that doesn't mean that that's your only option. So, okay, this is your highest and best, and people are like, okay, well, this one's the best, I'm going to take it. Well, if there's other terms that are better and another offer, you can always massage another offer and say, hey, we like your terms, but we have a little bit higher price from this other offer. Would your buyer come up a little bit, even if it's higher than they said in their escalation clause? Because most people aren't going to lose it over a few $1,000s. And so I think people are missing out on those opportunities by saying, well, everybody wrote me the highest and best, and this is the best one, and we're done.
I just had that exact thing happen. Listing agent called, said, our buyer loves our seller loves your buyer's terms. We just need $1,100 more dollars. That was like basically it. Like, can they go up there? And like, that was so professional to me to just like go here. Like, they love everything about this, but this. So
I've done that on the seller side, but on the buy side, when they have so many, have you ever done that? Because you've already kind of submitted it. It's like, here's my best, here's what I have. And what if there is room? You know what I mean? You've gone up to, let's say the pre-approval says 325 and it was 275, and they didn't really want to spend any more than 290, but they do have a little bit of room. But I've already submitted a fairly clean offer.
Well, things can change, and that buyer's agent might need to now know how many more offers there are, or maybe the buyer is, intensified. You just never know. I will say, one of the houses I sold recently, we had like 17 offers or something, and everybody knew it. Like, I tell them, multiple offers, due by 5, blah blah blah. One of the agents said to me when I called them to tell them they didn't get it, they said, "You didn't call highest and best."
Oh.
And I said, I think it was implied when I said your offers are due Sunday at 5. I just don't know what to say about that. So I'd say something you never know.
are you guys writing acceleration clauses? Or are you writing their best shot first of all?
Escalation clauses.
Yeah, escalation.
Are they using them? Are the sellers using them? Because
Yes.
Yes.
there's a lot of them that are just throwing them out. So, okay.
I don't use them all the time. I just go, I'm like, if we're gonna pay this much, if you're willing to pay this much, let's just write this much.
I'm
But
with
then they
Sarah.
lose it. They could possibly get it for less.
I
What do you
don't know which way that can go both ways.
Someone could
I
counter
think,
you
so.
and say we're willing to pay this anyways. This is what we want. So you're already putting your cards out there.
I have
I
to
had a
jump off,
situation.
guys. I'm so sorry. Have a good day.
We are
though.
running over.
All right.
So,
So sorry. Bye.
bye. Well, and then we'll let Jennifer Tucker was going to say something, and then we can call it quits for the class. Jennifer,
Oh, no reason for everybody to wait on. No worries.
we want to hear your story.
Come on,
I
Jim.
was just going to say, I had a buyer where we went in full on her highest and best, and we were in 9 offer competitive. And the listing agent told me because she didn't escalate that they didn't consider our offer.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So it kind of played on the other side too. It was weird.
so
Like she
weird.
couldn't go any higher. We did absolutely everything and they didn't even consider it because there wasn't an escalation clause.
Why would you put escalation clause if they can't go any higher?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, right.
But I'm telling you, that agent, that's how he approached it and that's how he communicated to me. At which point I was like, well, you did present it, right? Like, I mean, I have to ask him that question. And he said, yes, and we're just not considering it. We're ruling it out and we're going to consider the ones with escalation clauses.
I feel like that's an inexperienced or uneducated agent. I mean,
Well-
I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah.
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 I thought that Serena made a really good point in our breakout session. She just said she's having basically her, maybe you want to speak on it, Serena, but she has her offer almost filled out before they even look at the first house, just to prepare them.
I can speak to that. Yeah. So when we went back to talking about doing the buyer's consultation, so I always do that. I also do a regrouping of that and go over all the terms. And I basically sit down with them and craft a generic offer before we even start looking at houses and make sure that they understand every term and what their negotiating points are, what they're willing to concede on, what they're willing to negotiate on, and what are their must-haves. So basically, a lot of times I will go into a property with the purchase agreement already written and just tweak some terms on site if that's the one that they want to go for. So that I've had 2 offers recently in the last few months accepted, and because we got them in within our showing window and had them in the seller's hands and nobody else had come to the table because the showings hadn't happened yet. So both of those buyers got in after multiple offers previously. And it just kind of sets their mindset that I know what I want to offer on this house before I even see it. Let's look at the property and see if we pull the trigger. And they've been pretty aggressive after a couple of times going through that and getting beat out. Still, we have a very fine-tuned tool that we jump into a showing with. So it's been successful for me so far.
Super. Well, I think we're going to wrap this up because we do.
Yeah. Just out of respect for everybody, we want to wrap it up. Good
Yeah.
job, everybody. I hope you guys
Thank
all.
you. We could talk for hours. We all know
Right.
that. Next week is dynamic. When we did this, when Tim and I did this with our group, it was amazing conversations. The Pro's Guide to Objection Handling. So he takes on all the stuff around objections, and I want you guys to also come back next week with how you handle some of this stuff or anything that you found to be like super usable for you. So really appreciate all of you, and you'll hear from Rhonda. Okay. Thank you guys. Have a great week. Yes, it's week.
Thanks, everybody.
So, okay. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.